Hey everybody, this is Perch, and Joe. I don't know about you, but it's freezing down here.
Yeah, no, it is pretty cold. Luckily, it was just warm enough the past couple of days and rained enough to get rid of a lot of the snow. But it is at this point it is below freezing here.
I wanted to jump on with you. I did a video earlier about the numbers in January,
Yeah. Yep.
and the same disclaimer, by the way, I should say this is coming from ICV2. It's numbers from Comics Hub, which is a point of sale software system. I think it's about 100 or so store. What was it? How many stores? It was a tiny sampling.
I think it was 100, but maybe it's slightly more. But yeah, something in that ballpark. So it's not. It's certainly better than being like, oh, I stopped by 3 comic shops and this is what it was. However, when you look at like some of their numbers a few months or so back and compare it to Comic-Con, it's not really that different.
Yeah, I think this is a good ballpark. I think it's giving us an assessment of what's going on. Not perfect. But I think it's giving you it's giving you close.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that what also is happening here is that in addition to just giving you a range, you can start to see some trends.
Oh, for sure.
So I wanted to get you on to talk about. I gave my perspective. I mean, the big takeaway I had, but there's a lot more to drill into here, is that of the comics, you basically had of the top 50. You had 6 of them from Image, 33 from Marvel, 11 from DC, but 10 of those 11 comics from DC were Batman.
Yeah.
And average price of $4.45 average across the month. 13 number ones, 20 limited series. I don't know. I know I'm making maybe a big deal out of this, but that seems dangerous for a company to be where all their comics are focused on kind of one property that do well. It may be a situation you keep doing for now and you profit off of, but it's not one you want to live in.
Yeah. So also to clarify a little further, out of the 11 DC comics that made this list and the 10 being Batman related, 7 of those 10, or we could say 7 out of the 11 DC books that did make the top 50 in this chart, 7 had either the word Batman or the words Detective Comics in the title.
Right. Yeah.
So even if you're splitting hairs a bit and just being like, oh, Nightwing, or Joker, it's like, no, 7 of them literally had the word Batman or words Detective Comics in the title,
and they're the higher 7. So I mean, their DC's top selling book was Batman.
Yeah,
119. But here's as we dig into it, we're talking about this. So I enjoyed, and I talked about it, Silver Surfer Rebirth #1.
I did too.
By the Rons, by Ron Lim, Ron Mars. Ron Mars has been on the show.
Yep.
I like that book because it felt like it it could have been printed 30 years ago, printed today, felt very similar. I enjoyed a classic Silver Surfer story.
Yes, no, I liked it a lot. The only couple of things in terms of throwback potential there is, and you touched on this, the inking and the coloring. Remind you that you're in the present, for better or worse. But yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm glad I picked it up. It's a good time.
So here's the thing. So I've heard, behind the scenes that Silver Surfer Rebirth, there was a little bit of disappointment within Marvel about the sales of that book. And, definitely, I think since the Silver Surfer back with the original run was on the newsstand, they were selling a lot more back then, of course, because they were selling a lot more of everything, and I'm sure it's all true. But this is my pushback to whatever dipshit at Marvel thinks that that's bad sales. Silver Surfer Rebirth was beaten by only one DC comic, and that was Batman 119. Otherwise, Silver Surfer Rebirth by Ron and Ron beat every other DC comic that company published.
That's honestly incredible.
I
No, because even beyond that, I mean, people want to say, oh, it's Ron Mars, Ron Lim. They've been in the industry for a while. They're no Donnie Cates or Tom Taylor or Tom King or whatever. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm talking about like hot writers.
Yeah, the big names that they promote a lot, right?
And not that those writers aren't also selling a bunch. Donnie sold higher, and
Donnie has two big books up there, Hulk and Thor.
But yeah, absolutely, not a knock on him. But
even there, I mean, Silver Surfer beat Thor number 21.
Yeah.
Beat every Detective Comics issue that came out. Beat Dark Knights of Steel. Beat Joker. Beat Spawn. Beat Superman, Son of Kal-El.
Yeah. It seems like it beat a bunch of other number ones as well.
It was close. I mean, it was 6 issues away from Saga coming back hyped after its big launch. Saga beat it, but
but you know what? It's like, I'm sure Silver Surfer Rebirth, I'm going to make a prediction here, is going to dip. I don't think it's going to dip as far as Saga 56.
No way. I totally agree with you. In fact, I'd be willing to bet Silver Surfer Rebirth number 2 will, I think there's a good chance it's going to outsell Saga number 56.
And I just want to harp on this for a second here because, I really like Saga. I've been to multiple signings with Brian Fiona. I own original Fiona art.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a knock on them, as people yada yada yada. So I had talked about this. We've all talked about this a little bit. That there was going to. I thought this was going to be underperforming.
Yeah.
And boy, did this underperform.
Yeah.
I've talked to other retailers, and the stories are pretty similar. There were no second printings, so I ordered what I thought was going to be a good amount, and boy, am I stuck with too many copies of Saga number 55.
Mm-hmm. Pretty consistent story.
Yeah, it's a pretty consistent story, and there seem to be retailers who are genuinely shocked.
Yeah,
that there was really not a lot of interest. There would be they were like, oh, some of the people that were regulars who were buying it asked about it, but some didn't.
You're right. No, I that's been a story here as well. That's been the story in some of the groups I'm in. It is not selling what they thought. So again, disclaimer, the numbers we're talking about coming from Comics Hub, small sliver of the industry. And of course, people always point this out in the comments. These, of course, are numbers from sales to comic shops, not numbers passed through to customers. So some of the stuff you see here is especially like She-Hulk number 1 and Spawn Scorched number 1. Those are the Spawn that Scorched number 1 was the number 1 issue. She-Hulk number 1 was the number 2 issue. Those comics definitely benefited from variant covers and other things going on, and that's why they're at the top of this list. Spawn Scorched number 2 and She-Hulk number 2 are not going to be in the top. I doubt they're in the top 5. I don't think they're going to be in the top 10.
No.
But I'm not saying this like Silver Surfer Rebirth is like the top comic of all time. It was Moon Knight number 7 did better than that. I think we could make the same point with that comic. But actually, let's do that. So Moon Knight number 7, which is the 7th issue in this series, number 17. Silver Surfer Rebirth number 1, number 18. Other things that beat, in addition to beating every DC comic, everyone but Batman, not all the Batman, but just one issue of Batman number 119. Those comics beat things like, X-Men number 7, Devil's Reign number 3, the Noctera special that from Scott Snyder. It's pretty. Batman the Knight number 1 There's a lot of comics here. And then the other one that got a lot of attention on social media, Superman Son of Kal-El #6.
Yeah.
So the Superman Son of Kal-El is a weird little controversy to me, because if you take a step back from all the stuff that happened, the bisexual news, the CNN articles, everything that happened, and you remember that this is in effect Superboy. That's what this title is.
Yeah.
They can call him Superman Son of Kal-El all they want, and that's fine, but it's Superboy. Superboy has never been a huge seller of a book. And yet it feels like this thing had a chip on its shoulder almost from the very beginning, from where defending first of all, the name. And I don't know if you remember the original controversies around he's going to do a better job of his dad, and that pissed people off. And then he's going to be more of an activist, and that pissed people off. And then the book seems like it really wants to prove that it's right somehow, but it's Superboy. What do you expect is going to happen with Superboy?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very clear. Like I remember in your, I'm trying to think of where you mentioned this, but in one
3,000 videos I've done.
In one of your too many videos you put up, there was you talked about how it used to be about 12 months you'd have a bump. Or, like 12 issues, and it's more like 6 issues now, and you predicted like in no more than 6 issues would it be down back to where it was originally. This did, in 1 issue, it went back to where it was, and in 2 issues, because 7 also came out in January, 7 didn't make the top 50. So within 2 issues, it was performing below where it did before issue 5 in the reveal.
That's a really great point, and it's I can't believe I missed it in the earlier commentary on this. But you're right, and so I was completely wrong when I said it would be back down to where it was within 6 issues. Now, what we're talking about is Superman Son of Kal-El #5 was the official he came out issue, and they went on CNN. This was in November, and it was a big deal, and people talked about it. And then that month, it was the number 7 issue?
Number 6, I think.
Number 6 issue of the month.
Yeah.
So the following month, December, there was no Superman issue out, and Tom Taylor took a lot of people to task over that. But then January numbers come out, and we finally do see what happened with Superman Son of Kal-El #6. And it like you said, it goes right back to where it was at issue number 4. Issue number 4 was at 46, I believe.
It was at 42 there. Yeah.
No, sorry. Yeah. Issue number 6 is at 42, and issue number 4, before the big hype on CNN and everything, that was at 46, I think.
It was 44, 46 in that area. So it did go down, and then 7's not even charted here, but
44. You're right. 44. Okay. So it's doing 2 spots better than it did before this announcement. But to your point, number 7, Superman Son of Kal-El #7, also came out in January, and that's completely off the top 50, which means it's already past where it was before all this and gone further down.
Yeah. And I think what's important here is this is something of this is, like you were saying, a Superboy book, and there's only so much you can do with something like that. It doesn't, I think a lot of people try to act like, they'd be like, woke agenda. You do that. You hear people talk, somehow criticize, oh, it's because people are rejecting Tom Taylor. Tom Taylor has 2 books in the top 20.
He does.
That are not number 1s.
Yes, and that's the bunch of just confusing things here, and I completely agree with you. I don't think Superboy doing what it's doing has a single thing with him, the bisexual. In fact, that's kind of the whole point. It was going to do this no matter what, because it's Superboy. The goofy part of it is we had this weird interruption with issue 5 where the sales suddenly spiked up, and people pretended like now it's going to stay there. but it didn't. It stayed there for one issue. It only got one issue, and then it went right back to where it was destined to be. And yet, this whole argument around it of, I mean, like the fight that goes on is about him being bisexual, which has really, I mean, in these sales, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
it's taking its continual drop down. It's doing worse than I thought it was. I thought the CNN hype would last for a couple issues. It lasted for one before going right back to where it was.
To where it was and below within, right. 2 issues. That's crazy. But
meanwhile, like you said, higher up on the list, number 33 is Nightwing, number 88 by Tom Taylor. And in this comic, Nightwing's basically setting up a charity foundation and say, I mean,
yeah,
what's going on?
And not only that, it's a number 88. This was not a renumbered to number 1 situation. The numbers have been pretty solid this whole time on Nightwing. Tom has a lot of things to hang his hat on for,
yes, he does.
And he's doing a lot here to show that DC was wise to lock him in to an exclusive contract, because he is one of the writers who's moving books.
He to the point, why all the focus on Superboy from him, or frankly anyone, when it's doing what you could expect? Meanwhile, Dark Ages number 4 by Tom Taylor is number 16.
Yeah,
that is the highest selling Tom Taylor book here, by the way, not a DC book. Mm-hmm. Dark Knights of Steel number 3 is number 19 from DC, Tom Taylor, and then, as mentioned, 33 is Nightwing, and then finally, we get down here to 42, Superman, Son of Kal-El, number 6, and then to who knows where number 7 is, not in the top 50. But I just, this whole thing is bizarre because there's so much hype and attention, and it feels like there's this, like I said, chip on their shoulder for this comic when none of it, I'm dropping stuff now. That's how crazy, confused I am. None of this matters.
Yeah, I mean, it all gets very weird and muddled when people bring these sort of issues into it. I think one of the bigger takeaways here is that everyone should be getting concerned, not just with DC in general, because I think if a similar thing happened with a similar tiered character at Marvel, we'd be looking at roughly the same kind of thing.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think if they did a big rollout that, X-23 Laura Wolverine was coming out as bisexual and was in a relationship, like if they tried something like that and tried to get the media attention, or, if
well, we kind of had that example actually. Star Wars High Republic invoked a few of these things, and if you look at the numbers, they're the same slow downward slope of anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I think this is bad news. I also think it can cut either way you want to look at it. Turning your character bisexual does not keep sales up. Turning your character bisexual does not plummet sales either. It just pretty much leaves it at the poor state it was in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very clearly hitting a point where these gimmicks are not going to be working anymore.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's a gimmick.
Yeah, these gimmicks aren't working, and there needs to be some kind of course correction quickly overall in comics. This is not just a DC problem. Sure. Although, obviously these numbers, what's selling there, there is a concern. That said, and we also talked about this before we got on here, I feel like there's a lot of bad faith arguments people take from this kind of information of like,
absolutely.
Oh, so what they're saying is DC will never recover and they will be completely destroyed and we will dance on their ashes, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. This is far from the first time that DC has been like kind of pushed into a corner like this, and they've made multiple comebacks. I mean, there was a month during the Image Revolution early days that Image beat DC.
Mm-hmm.
And despite everything we're talking about now, and despite all the efforts that Image is doing, they haven't come close to repeating that in many years.
That's true. Even with some pretty big hits that were TV crossovers and other things. I just, it's an interesting way to look at it. And I do take your point. I think people should, I think DC starkly identifies a problem, but it's everywhere. I mean, I think you might, look at this and scratch your head and say, all right, why is it that the Avengers, a comic that's had a huge media merchandise, more hype than any other comic property over the last 10 years, why is Avengers number 52 the number 50 comic on the list?
Yeah.
Black Widow, Elektra Black, White, and Blood, Silk, number 1, is beating Avengers.
Sure.
Avengers, which is in the middle of a storyline that, where Jason Aaron says he's been building up to for 5 years now.
Yeah, it's being beaten by a Strange Academy, which is a nice little like cult classic kind of book, but no one outside of comics knows what the hell that is.
Yeah, I think you're even though yes, the issue did feature Black Cat saying that Mary Jane had a dump truck ass. Avengers number 52 should not be beaten by Mary Jane Black Cat Beyond number 1.
No, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that it's just like, why? How is Avengers this like cornerstone book? You look at that. It's like Thor at 2021. You would think if you ask someone on the street, wouldn't be selling as well as Avengers, and it is running laps around Avengers.
Yeah, I mean, the limited series, Elektra, Daredevil, Woman Without Fear, is number 13 on the list.
Yeah.
And then, as we mentioned already, Moon Knight, number 7. Silver Surfer Rebirth, number 1, the comic that apparently people within Marvel were disappointed by the numbers of, dramatically beats out Avengers.
Yes.
I don't understand that. So, well, I don't know, Joe. I want actually, we went off, but I want to circle back. I'm Jen Psaki here. I want to repeat something you just said, that we have seen comics in this state before. Go and look at the numbers video. You brought it up earlier before we start recording that, Hush, when that comic came out, revitalized sales of Batman, which were doing terrible before we started with Hush.
Yeah.
DC has had problems in the past. DC absolutely has the ability to recover from this. Everybody does. So does Marvel. There are easy ways to recover. I think the lessons that I take away from this, and I always see, is gimmicks won't work.
Mm-hmm.
Making your character bisexual, going on CNN, getting all that hype, it's not going to save your company. I don't know if anybody thinks that anymore. It's not going to do it. It's not going to bring in this phantom audience. It's going to suddenly start buying everything. And also, having massive hype and promotion toward the Avengers doesn't guarantee that it's going to sell. It still might get beat by, look, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Death of Doctor Strange Bloodstone, number 1, one shot, beats the Avengers. So
by a lot.
Yeah. So you really have to, if you're one of these comic publishers, if you're one of these companies, you've got to start looking at this stuff and saying, a lot of these things we're doing, a lot of these tricks we're doing, forget what people are saying on Twitter. Either way, either side of the argument you're on, the gimmicks, the tricks we're using, they're not working.
Yeah.
And if you see these issues, again, we'll come back in February, we'll look at this again. She-Hulk, number 1, Marvel should feel very happy about. Their top comic, the number 2 comic of the month. There's no chance it's going to be that high, which means it is heavily built on the fact that it was a number 1 and variants. And how long does the company want to keep living in that world where everything in their top list is propped up by these kind of abnormal things that could go away at any minute? Anyway, lots of abilities to recover, but the gimmicks and the tricks are not working.
No, and yeah, to even build on that, like again, while I did say, Saga seemed to underperform, that is number 12 on that list without a variant cover.
Yep, and to its credit, that's absolutely true.
I don't know. Did some of these also probably didn't really have too many variant covers? Like I don't think Venom number 4.
Spawn did. She-Hulk did. Batman, Venom, and Hulk, I think, had one. Inferno had a ton.
Yeah.
Tim Lies of Wolverine had a ton. X-Men and Thor had, I think, one. Most of these had one variant cover.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly the highest on the list with 0 variant covers.
That's true.
So that is something to say that there is the book market. You go on hiatus for 3.5 years, you're going to create trade waiters.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I would not be surprised if when the trade comes out, that it's the highest selling trade the month it's out.
I would bet so.
Yeah. That said, I think they maybe underestimated how many people have just moved to trade waiters at this point.
I completely agree. I think that's what we will see, and hopefully a good thing for that book. But it's an interesting look at things. I think when you really get into the numbers, you really talk it through. I think it reveals quite a bit, and I wish these were the conversations. I wish if somebody was going to do a 20-tweet thread, it would have a lot more to do with some of the details of what's going on, and not silly nonsense that I think doesn't matter when all is said and done. But
yeah, but here we are.
There we are. Well, Joe, thank you very much, and you have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.